Right. I forgot. She exclaimed, rummaging through her small bag to pull out a white envelope. What's this? It's a letter I got from Grandma. She told me to read it in secret, away from Caleb. I took the letter from Scarlett. Just then, my sister arrived to pick Scarlett up, and I handed her over. After saying goodbye to Scarlett, I quietly opened the letter. Glancing over it casually, I was shocked. What? You're kidding, right? The content was hard to believe. Rushed, I went back to where Caleb was. As soon as I returned, Caleb spoke in a whiny tone. Hey Evelyn, I'm thirsty. Could you get me some juice or something? Ignoring his request, I swiftly flipped back the comforter and reached for Caleb's pants. What? Evelyn? Without hesitation, I pulled down his pants. What the heck are you doing all of a sudden? Caleb yelled, hastily trying to pull his pants back up. I sighed at the unfolding scene. Looks like Mom's prediction was right. Hey! What's the deal with suddenly pulling down someone's pants? Are you taking advantage of my inability to move? That's awful, isn't it? Caleb looked up at me, perplexed. Indeed, it was wrong to do it without saying anything. But without that, I wouldn't have been able to confirm it. My name is Evelyn, 32 years old. I graduated and joined the company, and it's been 10 years. With this tenure, I have a stable income and am trusted with various responsibilities at work. I've been leading a fulfilling life, but there was one worry. It's about my husband, Caleb, whom I've been married to for 5 years. Our encounter was at a friend's wedding. We just happened to sit at the same table. Ah, weddings are wonderful, aren't they? Really, they both look so happy. We didn't talk much, but I was impressed by how genuinely happy Caleb seemed for the bride and groom. Later, through a friend, Caleb made the first move, and we started dating smoothly. I want to marry you. After Caleb's straightforward proposal, we got married. The surprise came later. What? You've been divorced before? And you have a child? Yeah, and you see, my ex-wife is demanding child support. Despite his divorce, his ability to genuinely celebrate others' weddings was, in a way, impressive. About the child support, isn't it just better to pay it? That's part of being a father, right? No, the thing is, I'm out of money this month. What? I had a sneaking suspicion that Caleb's income wasn't great. But I never imagined I'd end up paying child support for a child I didn't know with my salary. I rushed into marriage. I didn't regret marrying him, to be honest. But the real issue was Caleb's carelessness with money and his failure to see the problem. I quit my job again. He'd say with a nonchalant smile, time and time again. You quit. What are we going to do now? It'll be fine. You're working too, Evelyn. We'll manage somehow. He was the definition of relying on others. I didn't want him to depend on my money. Did he marry me for my money? I sometimes wondered. But putting money aside, Caleb wasn't a bad husband. He was a bit unconventional, but that was what made life exciting and fun. Feeling like something sweet. Want to hit the convenience store? Now? Yeah. On a weekday night, on a whim, we'd end up at the convenience store, just for sweets. All right. I'm not sleeping until I beat this game tonight. Okay. Sometimes I'd end up pulling an all-nighter with him over a game. It was honestly tough at our age, but I didn't dislike his spirit. That's why I couldn't leave Caleb, despite his financial irresponsibility and job instability. He wasn't cheating, at least. I thought as I let things slide, and before I knew it, here we were. But then, just the other day, I saw it. An unknown young woman sitting in the passenger seat of Caleb's car. I, who had prided myself on believing he would never cheat, felt like I'd been hit over the head from behind. The shock of Caleb's potential infidelity amidst my complete trust. Should I confront him directly or act covertly? After much thought, I consulted my sister. Married with an 8-year-old daughter, she had an immediate answer. Obviously, you gather evidence quietly. She was adamant that there was no benefit in alerting him without solid proof. So, following her advice, I focused on gathering evidence. Eventually, it became clear that Caleb was frequently seeing a woman. Her name is Abigail. She was the daughter of the owner of a private clinic where Caleb was a client. They mostly met on Thursday afternoons, driving around in Caleb's car. And I managed to capture them entering a hotel together several times. I thought he was honest about women at least. Disappointment hit me before anger. Married life wasn't unpleasant, but it wasn't easy either. In addition to the child support, I found out about his debt. Both were from before our marriage. Things I should have known about or were none of my business. He married me without disclosing these facts. Wasn't it almost like being deceived? There were times when I thought that. And I took pride in the fact that he was faithful. I never imagined even that would be betrayed. I'll confront him with everything and then leave. Caleb, carefree and nonchalant as ever, probably had no clue I knew about his secret. I wanted to give him a surprise for once. So, I was contemplating the day to reveal everything. Soon after, I received a shocking message from Caleb. Sorry, I had an accident. I might not be able to move my body anymore. I left work immediately and rushed to the hospital Caleb had mentioned. It was the clinic owned by Abigail's father. Feeling faint-hearted, I even called my mother to come with me. Are you Caleb's wife? Please, this way. I never imagined meeting this person under such circumstances. The one guiding us at the reception was Caleb's affair partner, Abigail. I had seen her face several times from behind or in profile over the past few months, but facing her directly like this felt surreal. Led to the room, I found Caleb lying in the bed. Caleb! Oh, Evelyn. You came. His voice and expression seemed good. My mother and I exchanged a relieved look. The message had startled us, but he seemed to have only minor injuries. What a relief, I thought. But then, the doctor's next words left me speechless. There's a high possibility that Caleb has become hemiplegic. Hemiplegic? It means, in Caleb's case, the right half of his body might not move anymore. Is there no chance of recovery? The doctor closed his eyes as if in deep thought. It's difficult. Then said. I found myself sobbing uncontrollably, supported by my mother. After calming down a bit, Caleb began to speak hesitantly. This hospital, because of its facilities, can't accommodate long-term patients, so I'll be sent home. But what about thorough examinations? Your right side isn't moving, right? There could be other reasons. Well, I'm tired from the accident today. We'll revisit this. Caleb's words, somewhat hesitant, worried me, but I didn't want to push him. Reluctantly, I had my mother help me take Caleb back to our apartment. After laying Caleb in bed, I went out to the entrance to see off my mother. Sorry for the sudden call today. Thank you. It's okay. But it seems the timing to confront him about the affair has vanished. Indeed. What will you do now? If Caleb is truly hemiplegic, I can't abandon him just because he cheated. I'll think about it. Remember, you're the most important to me. It seemed like my mother was advising me not to sacrifice myself for Caleb. Thanks. She seemed to want to say more, but left with a complex expression on her face. The next day, my life caring for Caleb began. Although he was hemiplegic, the other side of his body worked, so the need for care was less than I expected. However, soon, taking care of Caleb's mental health as he couldn't go outside became more challenging. I'm just so bored. Surprisingly, he didn't complain much about his immobility, but his frustration seemed to stem from boredom. He would summon me frequently for trivial things, like wanting juice or needing his back scratched. These were minor tasks, but the constant demands wore me down. During such moments, my sister's daughter, my niece Scarlett, suddenly decided to visit our home. Scarlett and Caleb hardly know each other. Why she would visit under these circumstances was initially a mystery to me. When I asked my sister why, her reply was nonchalant. Obviously, because I am worried about you. Even Scarlett at 8 years old is concerned about you. That's sweet of Scarlett. I'd join if I could, but I'm swamped with work, and it's all I can do to arrange transportation. Mom seems busy too, but at least with Scarlett around, Caleb won't be able to throw tantrums in front of a child. Her prediction was spot on. With Scarlett present, perhaps due to his male pride or just plain embarrassment, Caleb drastically reduced how often he called for me. This gave me a chance to chat with Scarlett about school life, the latest elementary school trends, and all sorts of girl talk. But why does enjoyable time always fly by so quickly? As evening approached, it was time for Scarlett to leave. My sister called to pick her up, and though it was hard to part, it was time to say goodbye to Scarlett. Okay, Scarlett. Your mother will be here soon, so let's wait outside. Okay. As we headed to the entrance, feeling the reluctance, Scarlett suddenly seemed to remember something. Right. I forgot. She rummaged through her small bag and pulled out a white envelope. What's this? It's a letter I got from Grandma. She told me to read it in secret, away from Caleb. From Mom? Thank you. I received the letter from Scarlett. Right then, my sister arrived to pick Scarlett up, so I handed her over. After seeing Scarlett off, I quietly looked inside the envelope. It wasn't mailed but delivered through Scarlett, which seemed overly cautious. What could it contain? I casually read through and was stunned. What? You're kidding, right? The content was too astonishing to believe immediately. But my mother wouldn't fabricate such a lie. If this is true, I need to verify it. I hurried back to Caleb. As soon as I returned, Caleb spoke in a coddling tone. Did Scarlett leave? Yes, my sister just picked her up. Got it. Hey Evelyn, I'm thirsty. Wake me up and get me some juice or something. Ignoring his request, I swiftly pulled back the comforter and reached for Caleb's pants. What? Evelyn? Without hesitation, I pulled his pants down. What are you doing all of a sudden? Caleb yelled, frantically trying to pull his pants back up. I sighed at the scene unfolding before me. It seems Mom was right. Hey! What's the deal with suddenly pulling down someone's pants? Are you taking advantage of my inability to move? That's awful, isn't it? Caleb looked up at me, bewildered. Indeed, doing it without saying anything was wrong. But I wouldn't have been able to confirm it otherwise. Hey! Are you listening? Caleb raised his voice again, seeing me silent and looking down. Seriously. This uncertainty about the future is unbearable. Maybe it's time to break up? I said his thoughts out loud, and Caleb looked at me in surprise. Oh, you seem almost happy about it? Your face is giving you away. Caleb, looking flustered, covered his mouth. Happy? No way. But maybe you're right. With this condition, I'll just be a burden. Maybe it's better we part ways. Caleb sighed heavily, exuding a sense of resignation. I don't mind, you know? I'll take care of you. We vowed at our wedding, remember? In sickness and in health. Eh? No, but... Besides, it's not all bad. We can still talk like before. And now, I won't have to fret over your affairs anymore. Eh? I smirked mischievously. Oh, me? An affair? His eyes darted around. His lie transparent. Don't worry. You may have been capable before, but now, you can't move by yourself. You won't be able to cheat anymore. Now you're all mine. Caleb let out a small yelp and turned pale. Evelyn, actually, I was planning to leave you. That's fine. Leave it to me. But I feel terrible about this. Don't feel guilty. We're a couple, after all. Despite my reassuring smile. Caleb trembled like a cornered deer. But just rest for now. I'll go prepare dinner. Caleb couldn't say anything more. I left the room. Certainly, I'd cornered Caleb. He'd surely take some action. I had believed Caleb was truly hemiplegic. It was the clinic of Abigail's father. I wanted to have it checked at a larger hospital, but Caleb resisted, so it never happened. Now I understand why he was so reluctant about hospitals and treatment. Immediately after leaving the room, I listened at the door. I'd left it slightly ajar, so Caleb wouldn't notice. I couldn't see inside, but I could hear everything Caleb did. "Help! I'm in trouble!" Soon, I heard him speaking to someone. He was on the phone. Speaking softly, perhaps wary of me. "That's what she said. Before bringing up divorce, she insisted we won't separate. What should I do? Escape? Impossible. I'm too scared. She must know about you and me. She's unusually persistent about infidelity. She must know already." I heard it all. Now it was clear. Caleb was on the phone with his affair partner, Abigail. "Please, say it's a call from the hospital. Get me admitted somewhere else, any hospital. Otherwise, I don't know what Evelyn might do." As Caleb pleaded with the person on the phone, I knocked on the door. "Caleb? Are you on the phone? May I come in?" "Oh, I'll hang up now." After waiting a moment, I entered to find Caleb looking paler than before, lying in bed. "You look worse than before. Are you okay?" "Oh, I'm fine. Well, maybe not. Can you take me to the hospital?" "Of course, that sounds serious. I'll contact the hospital right away." "Ah, thank you." He looked genuinely relieved. Thinking this was his ticket out. He's sorely mistaken. The real game is just beginning. I'll expose everything about Caleb and Abigail at the hospital. Upon arrival, Abigail greeted us. "Caleb, are you okay?" "Abigail. Thanks. I'm feeling a bit off. After what happened, it's understandable." Abigail smiled knowingly and looked at Caleb tenderly. "Can I rest for a bit? I might even need to be admitted." He's not even a doctor to be making such decisions. But Abigail nodded understandingly and led us to a private room. "We don't usually do admissions, but my father will come to check on you when he's available. Please wait here until then." About half an hour later, Abigail returned with a doctor. I had met him before. He's the clinic's director, Abigail's father. "You're feeling unwell?" "Yes." Their exchange of glances was awkward. As Abigail's father raised his stethoscope to his ears, I raised my hand. "Let's cut the act, shall we?" "What?" Caleb, Abigail, and her father. All froze, except for me. "Evelyn, what are you suddenly saying?" Ignoring Caleb's protest, I grabbed his pants like before and yanked them down forcefully. "Whoa! What are you doing? Stop it!" Caleb scrambled to pull his pants back up. "As I said before, something's off, right? Are you worried that if I become hemiplegic and useless as a man?" "I see. You were only after my body. I'm disappointed." Caleb pretended to be upset, not noticing the expressions of the others in the room. "After your body? Unfortunately, I'm not as lewd as you guys." "What did you say? You still haven't realized?" "Realized what?" As Caleb tilted his head, Abigail whispered in his ear. Finally understanding, Caleb's eyes widened in shock. "No, this is, well, that. Hemiplegic? You move too quickly for that. Everything's been exposed. Why keep up this poor act?" The letter from my mother had only a few lines. "I've looked into it, and there's a high chance Caleb's hemiplegia is an act, perhaps a lie to leave Evelyn. Maybe try pulling down his pants to see his reaction." Following my mother's advice led to this revelation. In a panic, Caleb, who was supposedly unable to move his right hand, easily pulled up his pants. "So it was all an act from the start." No, that's not. Explain everything. Sweating profusely, Caleb complied. The day of the accident, the person riding next to Caleb in the car was Abigail. They were in the midst of an affair. The injuries were minor for both of us, but the car was badly damaged. I thought if the police got involved, Evelyn would find out. So I figured if I pretended to be severely injured, I could cover it up. The absurdity of it all left me speechless. Did you think you could keep up such a ridiculous life forever? No, well... Or was it all to hide your affair? That's not it. Before Caleb could respond, Abigail interrupted. Caleb was just trying to spare you the pain of a breakup. After all, finding out about an affair during a drive would be humiliating. So he told a kind lie about being hemiplegia, hoping for a smooth separation. Kind? How is cheating with someone much younger than himself, and then lying about it, kind? Stop it! Our love is real. Abigail said this proudly, but Caleb, shrinking in the background, looked like his elaborate lie had caught up to him. Is that so? Then you should have been upfront about it. Right, Abigail's father? Abigail's father flinched. His forehead glistened with more sweat than Caleb's. Well... The moment I realized the hemiplegia was a lie, I had a lot to say to you. Me? What might that be? Abigail's father looked at me with a forced smile. Perhaps he couldn't abandon his daughter. I felt sorry for him, but as a doctor, he did something he shouldn't have done. I guess you just listened to your daughter's pleas, but how did you feel watching me break down in tears? Don't you have any professional pride? Wasn't it empty to go as far as forging a medical report? Abigail's father seemed to catch his breath. He began to speak, carefully choosing his words. That wasn't forgery. It was a diagnostic error. How could such an obviously healthy man be mistakenly diagnosed as hemiplegia? He probably wanted to insist it was a mistake, not malicious forgery. Well, as for me, it doesn't really matter. Fortunately, I have relatives in both the medical and legal fields, so I'll be consulting with them. What? You can't. Abigail's father's complexion changed. Understandably so. For a private practitioner, reputation and client reviews are crucial. If it became known that he dirtied his hands as a doctor just to unite his daughter with her affair partner, the clinic's reputation would undoubtedly hit rock bottom. Please, have mercy! There's no mercy here. I'll have my lawyer discuss the details with you later. Since Caleb seems to be in good health, please go back to your duties. He was hardly in the state of mind for work, but it was true that other patients were waiting. The calls of the nurses had been audible for a while. Yet, Abigail's father, who had been reluctant to leave, was finally forced out by me, barely able to walk, and exited the room. That left Abigail, Caleb, and me. In the silent room, I reconsidered the situation. On the day of the accident, Caleb was with Abigail, engaged in their affair. Right after the accident, given the proximity to the scene, they sought medical attention at Abigail's father's clinic. Perhaps it was then that Abigail conceived the idea. Could she keep Caleb for herself this way? It's unclear if Caleb had contemplated divorce, but it's unlikely all this was just to conceal an affair. It's more probable that Abigail persuaded him. For Caleb, who always wanted to quit his job, the allure of a doctor's daughter, a sign of wealth, was irresistible. Moreover, claiming hemiplegia would serve as an excuse to leave his job. He probably thought that if he used this as a pretext to break up before the affair was exposed, everything would neatly resolve. But that was a flawed plan from the start. I knew about their affair even before Caleb's accident. Though I lost the opportunity to confront them amidst the confusion of the accident, now that their lies were exposed, I had all the leverage. There was plenty of evidence. Well then, I looked slowly at the two of them. Caleb was sitting on the bed, and Abigail stood beside him. Regarding what comes next, I want a divorce. Surprised by my statement, Caleb and Abigail exchanged looks. A divorce, is that okay? Okay or not, I've known about your affair for a long time. I've been preparing to leave since then. Caleb looked conflicted, and Abigail's eyes sparkled. So Caleb and I can be together. We don't have to meet in secret anymore. Despite their bold meetings, it seemed they had been trying to keep it discreet. Yes, after we divorce, you're free to do as you please. However, there are conditions for the divorce. Conditions? Abigail frowned in confusion. Yes, don't worry, it's nothing serious. First, I'll be seeking compensation from both Caleb and Abigail. Additionally, there will be no division of assets. I'll be keeping all the savings. That's all. Isn't that a bit unfair, Evelyn? Unfair? Have you forgotten that for the 5 years we've been married, I've covered most of our living expenses? That alone is more than the savings. Caleb, notorious for his laziness, has never held a job for long. His income was unstable and significantly lower than his peers. Moreover, he was a big spender, still not having paid off debts from before our marriage. Sure, Evelyn has helped me, but I've been working hard too. He seemed dissatisfied with the idea of handing over all the savings. Caleb stuttered and struggled to find the right words. I didn't want to prolong this confrontation and was considering setting a later date to talk things through when, unexpectedly, Abigail came to Caleb's rescue. Caleb! We've come this far, haven't we? Don't worry about money. Dad's here, and I'll take care of everything. More than anything, I want us to freely express our love as soon as possible. Abigail. Love conquers all. In front of his soon-to-be ex-wife, the audacity of their display was astounding. What did Abigail see in him? That was a lingering question, but her intervention wrapped things up. All right, I'll leave the divorce papers, compensation, and the specifics to my lawyer. I'll send your belongings to Abigail's place. I suppose we won't be seeing each other anymore. Well then. Take care. The two, already acting like a couple, cozied up to each other. I remembered something I had almost forgotten to mention. Oh, right. Don't forget to keep up with the child support payments. And try to at least make the interest payments on your debt. Abigail looked up at Caleb, standing beside her, in disbelief. What, child support? Debt? What's that about? Didn't you know? He has a child with his ex-wife. Oh, and don't get me wrong. I didn't steal him from his previous marriage. Caleb was already divorced when we met. A bit agitated. And the debt? Abigail asked. It was there even before we married. So, I don't know what it's for. How much is it? About $30,000, I believe. I smiled as I informed her, and Abigail's face went pale. Understandably so. With the added burden of paying me compensation, plus child support and debt, it's enough to make one feel faint. But we can work hard together to pay it off, right? Abigail, trying to motivate herself, clenched her fist and turned to face Caleb. Caleb. Yeah! And he nodded vaguely. Good for you, Caleb. You've got such a positive partner in Abigail. That should motivate you to find a new job. New job? Abigail's eyes were empty. Yes, because after this incident, Caleb hastily resigned. Now he's officially unemployed. He has no qualifications, so getting a full-time job might be challenging. But love conquers all, right? You'll manage. Abigail muttered under her breath. But still, there's that issue, she said. Abigail was clearly in shock, and Caleb was panicking. I waved goodbye to the two of them and left the hospital. Later, the divorce was finalized without issue. To my slight concern, Abigail's father paid all the compensation, probably fearing that I might spill everything. Considering the potential fallout if this incident became public, he probably thought it was a small price to pay. This cleared all obstacles for Caleb and Abigail. However, they didn't remarry immediately. Caleb was pushing for it. Right away. But, well, maybe. Abigail was hesitating. Furthermore, the two of them were constantly fighting. with Caleb never finding a job and Abigail reluctant to make their relationship official. Even if you think someone is your destiny, it's understandable to hesitate when faced with such a hopeless case. In my situation, by the time I realized everything, I had already grown too attached to Caleb. If it wasn't for that, I would have left him much sooner. Thanks to all this, I'm now enjoying a peaceful life for the first time in a while. At first, I thought I might feel lonely. Caleb, despite his many problems, was good at entertaining and pampering people. But once he was gone, I realized how much more comfortable life could be. No more sudden demands for sweets, no more all-night gaming sessions. Some might find that exciting, but it was too much for my 30s body. Now I can take care of myself, live each day with ease, and not always on the edge. No more stretching beyond my limits. I'm looking forward to a life that fits me, without overextending or pushing too hard. Call an ambulance, quick! How can you be so oblivious? Suddenly, Brittany, who lives next door, rushed into my apartment in a panic. It all started when Tony collapsed in the bathroom. Lately, Tony never parts with his mobile phone, no matter where he is in the house. In fact, he even takes it to the bathroom, apparently talking to someone. Why she, living next door, knew in real time that he had collapsed in the bathroom is beyond me. Honestly, there's no reason for her to call me oblivious. I already know why she is connected to him, and how she knew immediately about his collapse in the bathroom. They might think it's a secret, but there have been many suspicious moments in the past. It's funny they don't realize that they're the only ones who don't notice. I've turned a blind eye until now, but I've decided to put a stop to it. They've been having their way, thinking I've been silently watching. Of course, I plan to retaliate against Tony, but I also want Brittany to suffer just like me. They shouldn't think they can get away with this. It's time for them to pay for 13 years of betrayal. I'm Rosetta, a 40-year-old housewife. I met my husband Tony through a mutual acquaintance. At my age, I long to marry and build a warm home. A friend suggested I meet Tony, saying it wouldn't hurt just to meet. I was all work and no play, with no chances to meet anyone. Watching my friends get married, I wondered what life with someone I loved would be like. Thinking it was just a meeting, I said yes, only to find an unexpectedly great connection. Our hobbies and topics of conversation matched, and our conversational pace and rhythm felt incredibly comfortable. It was as if we had met before, and I wanted to see him again. I had dated a few men before, but none with whom I could talk so freely. My first impression of Tony was of a caring man, always putting me first. I quickly fell for his ever-present kindness. Rosetta, I thought this would suit you. What's this? It's not my birthday or our anniversary. Can I open it? Please do. Inside the box he handed me was a beautiful lemon yellow dress. It's lovely. I've never worn a dress like this. I wonder if it suits me. It's definitely going to suit you, Rosetta. I want to see you in it here. Here? I'm a bit nervous. I quickly tried on the dress. Yeah. The size is just right. It suits you as I thought. I'm happy. Thank you. He nodded with satisfaction as he looked at me. Though kind to me, I sometimes caught a glimpse of his stern side. It was mostly during work-related calls. Even on dates, he'd occasionally receive calls and issue instructions. I'd find myself admiring his commanding presence. He, a manager, seemed to be always busy, even on his days off. It must be tough getting work calls even on your day off. Well, it's not too bad. But it can be tough dealing with incompetent subordinates. Oh, we should head out. Our restaurant reservation is coming up. Laughing, we hand in hand hurried to the restaurant we had reserved. I wanted to marry a wonderful woman like you. Will you marry me? If it's with you, I'd be happy to. Please take care of me from now on. I felt happy to be able to marry him. But this happiness, I soon realized, was fleeting. I intended to continue working as a nurse even after getting married. but things seemed to be heading in a bad direction. About the housework. I plan to continue working, even though we're married. Is it okay to ask you to help when I have night shifts? His expression then turned grim. You intend to continue working? Yes, is that a problem? It's a bit, not right for a woman to keep working after marriage. Nowadays, it's not uncommon for couples to be dual income. In reality, there are more households around me where both partners are working hard as dual income couples than those with just a housewife. Even after hearing my reasoning, he insisted I should quit working after marriage, so I asked him why. I thought there must be some reason from his perspective. Believing it's important for spouses to understand and compromise with each other, I decided to ask. Ever since college days, I've been coming back to a dark room and turning on the light alone. Tony, you've lived alone for a long time since college, right? The moment the room lights up and I realize I'm alone, I just hate that feeling. His expression seemed to darken for a moment. So that's how you felt. I lived with my family for a long time, but I guess living alone can make you feel that way. That's why I want you, Rosetta, to quit your full-time job. Of course, I'll work in your place. There's even talk of me becoming a director soon. Really? A promotion at this time? That's amazing. Then, scratching the tip of his nose awkwardly, he replied. Whenever he feels shy about something, he fiddles with his nose and breathes heavily. He looked at me as if expecting more praise, so he must have been really happy. He always prioritized career advancement, working hard to be recognized at work, so this honor must mean a lot to him. It's not a big deal for someone like me. But there are only a few among my peers who have become managers, so I guess my progress is relatively fast. Proudly saying this, I felt a hesitation beside him. Sensing my indecision, he leaned in and said, You're not going to cling to your job when I, your husband, am asking you this humbly, right? I was speechless at his expression, one I had never seen before. It was unbelievable, and instinctively, I felt I shouldn't meet his eyes anymore, a strange sensation. Being told this, I felt I had no choice but to quit. I wanted to continue a bit longer, but I decided to resign, considering it was my beloved husband's request. Life as a housewife, starting with our marriage, was harder than I expected. I thought being a housewife meant doing household chores, but it was extremely busy. Taking advantage of me being a housewife, Tony stopped doing any housework. Women's workplace is like the home, right? It's wrong to just rush through work to have your own free time. I couldn't talk back to him when he said this in a stern tone. In the morning, I prepared breakfast and helped him get ready for work, timing it with when he woke up. Until he returned at night, I finished all chores like preparing dinner and cleaning the bathroom. Tony, breakfast's ready. I'll be right there. He sat down at the table, looking around leisurely and sighed deeply. You know I went out for a work-related drink last night, right? Yes, I thought so since you came back late. What about it? If I went out for drinks, shouldn't the breakfast be Eggs Benedict? I'm sorry, I didn't consider that. Then he, tapping his finger on the table, silently glared at me. He was particular and would strongly point out anything that differed even slightly from his preferences. Hey, is this where the vase was supposed to be? A normal vase placed beside the TV stand. I bought it thinking it would add a nice touch to the home since he likes flowers. I haven't decided exactly where to place the vase, but I wonder if something went wrong. The vase? I moved it a bit since it was blocking the TV view. Tony clicked his tongue and glared at me. With this angle, it blocks the view of a painting from my seat. A masterpiece obscured by flowers. What were you thinking? So selfish to prioritize watching TV. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Try to understand the feelings of a man who's dealing with such a selfish woman. He kept blaming me relentlessly. Hearing how inadequate I was, I started to strongly believe I was a terrible person. Rosetta, you've always lived at home and only worked as a nurse, so you might not understand, but society isn't so kind, you know? Being limited to the medical world like that. When he said this, I started to feel anxious, wondering if my narrow perspective was causing him discomfort. You say you're a doctor or nurse, but in the end, you only know a narrow world, don't you? Yes, I suppose. I've been working at the same company for 30 years since graduating from college, so I'm good at sensing these things. I'll teach you, so be sure to pay attention. Honestly, I felt that continuing as a nurse would have been far better. His relentless sarcasm often lasts for 2 to 3 hours. Showing any sign of displeasure means starting all over again with the lectures, so I'm not even allowed to look upset. I focused solely on giving answers that would satisfy him or nodding as if I were listening. While it's possible to ignore Tony's sarcasm, there's another issue that's been bothering me for a while. Brittany, our next-door neighbor. She seems to be a successful influencer, and her voice can be heard every night during her broadcasts. Despite living in a well-insulated condominium, the sound leaks through, indicating she must be playing at a very high volume. I've been troubled by this noise since moving in 13 years ago and have complained 2 or 3 times. Remembering those times still makes me angry. Since those complaints, it seems I've been marked as an enemy in her eyes. Every time we pass each other, she clicks her tongue at me. Although it's a regular occurrence, it's still unpleasant to experience every night. Don't you know what kind of person the neighbor is? He looked at me sharply when I asked. Is there a problem with the neighbor? I hope it's not trouble with them. No, it's not trouble, but the noise. I was wondering if there's something we could do about it. I don't think it's a big deal. Just don't confront the neighbor directly, okay? Saying that, he ended the conversation and drank his beer. I haven't brought it up since. Tony often comes home late at night due to his busy work schedule. I try to wait up for him, but sometimes I fall asleep. One night, I thought I heard Tony's voice and tried to get up, thinking he was home, but I was too sleepy. I needed to get up quickly to avoid making him angry. However, when I got up, I couldn't see him anywhere. Huh? Didn't he come home? I could hear Tony's voice, but where was it coming from? Listening closely. It seemed to be coming from next door. It also sounded like he was talking to someone, but was he talking to Brittany? Why would his voice be coming from Brittany's apartment at 1 a.m.? Feeling uneasy, I decided to use some savings I had hidden away from my working days to hire a detective. I never thought I'd be the one to hire a detective. What the detective found was unexpected. However, I still felt it wasn't the right time to confront Tony with this evidence. As the year-end approached, I had a bad feeling. With the long holiday break around the corner and the unpredictability of what might happen on the last day of work before then, I felt a bit heavy. That year-end, Tony came home a bit early from his last day of work before the long holiday, seemingly in a good mood. He had been drinking and was more relaxed than usual. Lately, he'd been irritable and taking it out on me, so this was a bit of a relief. Welcome home, Tony. You're home early today. Yeah, it's the day before the break, so I had a few drinks with colleagues. I see. Must have been tiring. Looking at the fridge, he asked for more alcohol. Hey, I'm not done drinking. Get me something. It was a good thing that he was in a good mood, but his face was clearly flushed from drinking too much. Your face is all red. Haven't you drunk a bit much? Drunk too much? Are you saying I can't hold my liquor? Alcohol is essential for office workers. I'm not weak to it. Saying that, he quickly drank the beer he was holding. He doesn't particularly like beer. He used to boast about how well he could drink, but I've had to pick him up from bars countless times. Despite his grand claims about being a corporate drinker, I always end up taking care of him when he's drunk. Man, I've sweated a lot drinking tonight. I'll take a quick shower before bed. Saying this, he took his mobile phone to the bathroom. He never used to bring his mobile phone to the bathroom, but lately, he doesn't let it out of his sight, even there. He even takes it with him to the bathroom, which makes me wonder if there's something he desperately doesn't want seen. Thinking about this, I decided to keep an eye on the situation. From the bathroom where he went, I could hear him talking on the phone. The conversation was too quiet to make out, but I wondered what could be so important to discuss in the bathroom. Then, a loud noise came from the bathroom. Shocked, I rushed there and found Tony, looking pained, curled up in the bathtub. Just as he regained consciousness and tried to get out, he collapsed again, unconscious. I quickly checked his condition. At that moment, someone was furiously banging on the door. The banging was so intense, I thought the door might break. It's a rental, and having someone break the door isn't exactly a laughing matter. And who could it be at such a critical time? Yes, I'm a bit busy right now. When I opened the door, it was Brittany. Move! Get out of the way! I couldn't comprehend why she would show up right now. She pushed past me, making a beeline for the bathroom without any hesitation. Wait! What are you doing? Tony, what's wrong? Tony! Ignoring my astonishment, she took charge of the situation. She acted as if she were the wife, which was bizarre. Call an ambulance, quick! How can you be so oblivious? I couldn't let her continue her reckless behavior. There was only one thing to do. Confront her with reality. I just stood there, looking down on them. Call an ambulance? And you think you have the right to order me around? What do you mean? Just what I said. Do you think you, of all people, have the right to give orders to me, his wife? She seemed taken aback by my retort. As if it was unthinkable for me to talk back. If you're so concerned, why don't you call the ambulance? No, I can't, that's why I'm asking you. Think a little, will you? Suddenly she got angry and objected. I guess so. She snapped back angrily, obviously because it would be embarrassing for her as the mistress to have stormed into the house in a panic. She's probably afraid of a call revealing the affair. She's flustered to make a call, just staring at Tony lying there. I couldn't help but laugh. You can't even make a phone call? That's just pathetic. My words seemed to anger her. What do you mean, pathetic? Are you mocking our pure love? Her belief in their pure love, despite being just an affair, was terrifying. Focused solely on themselves, their blindness was almost enviable, but this wasn't the time for that. If you're really concerned about him, making a call should be easy. You should be able to do it. I challenged her to make the call, showing her the phone. If she really could, there should be no problem. Furious, she glared at me, her face red with anger. Tony seemed to regain consciousness from our voices. He was unconscious, and even when he woke up, he still seemed to be in a lot of pain. He was still in pain, struggling to speak. My head hurts like it's splitting. Call an ambulance. He looked extremely pained, his usual composed expression gone. I remarked, it must be hard. We really should call an ambulance, shouldn't we? What are you waiting for? Do it now. Right. Something needs to be done quickly. Ignoring his words, I decided to take action. Leaving him rolling in agony, I silently left the house. I took the waterproof-packed mobile phone that had fallen in the bathroom, so he couldn't call from his phone. Brittany and Tony, now awake, seemed relieved and were leisurely affirming their love for each other. Blind to everything but themselves, they didn't even notice I took the phone. I couldn't deal with this foolish, cheating couple any longer. Seizing the opportunity, I decided to leave the house. I immediately left the house and contacted Brittany's boyfriend, Robert. Robert is Brittany's boyfriend, with whom she has a relationship serious enough to consider marriage. He stays over about half the week, so they're practically cohabitating. I've run into him a few times in the hallway and at the garbage disposal area. He's a doctor working at a nearby hospital. I remembered receiving his business card before. Good evening. Sorry for calling so late. It seems Brittany is at my place for some reason. Could you come and pick her up? Is this Rosetta? Long time no see. You're saying Brittany is at your place? What do you mean by that? His voice over the phone sounded confused. Understandably so. Anyone would be surprised by a sudden night call from their girlfriend's neighbor. I'll explain the details later. Are you at work right now? No, I've just finished work and am killing time at a restaurant near the workplace. Brittany said she had a stream tonight and asked me to come back late. So, Brittany had been making sure not to let Robert stay at her place. She was casually talking to Tony over the phone while Robert was away. Can you come as soon as possible? I'll head over right away. Let's meet at the condominium entrance. Thank you. I'll join you there. 3 minutes after the call, he arrived at the condo's entrance, and we went to my apartment together. On the way, I briefly explained the situation. To put it bluntly, it seems Brittany and my husband Tony have been having an affair for many years. What? What do you mean? I found out through investigation. They met in a service store 13 years ago and have been involved ever since. Robert was visibly shocked by my words. 13 years? Since that long ago? Yes. She moved into the apartment next to ours by chance 2 years ago. No way. Then what am I? I thought we were going to get married. He was struggling to come to terms with the reality of being cheated on. It would be so understandable, considering his marriage plans. It seems to be for money. I suspected my husband's infidelity and hired a detective. The investigation results indicated that. That's unbelievable. Brittany rushed into our apartment when Tony collapsed in the bath. Apparently, they were talking on the phone even in the bathroom. He seemed deep in thought but then looked at me. That explains it. No wonder she never lets go of her phone. But you said Tony collapsed. Is he all right? He's fine, just drank too much. No danger to his life. After explaining briefly, I led him to my apartment. Entering quietly, they were still engrossed in their melodramatic scene. I'll fight against the world for you, Tony. Having such a beautiful woman love me, I'm blessed. This must be a trial from God to reach true love. In the 10 minutes it took me to leave, contact Robert. Within the short time, an epic story seemed to have unfolded. A tragic tale of lovers who can't swear eternal love to each other. I was surprised Tony could spout such cheesy lines. Glancing at Robert beside me, he looked indescribable, seemingly shaking from the cringeworthy dialogue. Unable to bear it any longer, Robert dropped his bag, alerting them to our presence. What's going on here? Robert, why are you here? Strangely, both were naked, which was comical. Why? That should be my line. You told me not to come home early because of a stream. Was it for this? Normally mild-mannered Robert raised his voice, and Brittany seemed a bit taken aback. Well, that's because, you know, the fans and antis are troublesome. I was worried about what would happen if they found out I have a boyfriend. Brittany looked evasive. I knew Robert only from brief exchanges in the apartment complex. He never seemed like someone who would raise his voice. Indeed, he listened calmly when I explained everything to him earlier, showing his ability to control his emotions. So, for Robert to react this strongly, she must have really crossed a line. Stop taking people for fools. To think you've been secretly having an affair with the neighbor for 13 years. She suddenly became defensive, her eyes darting around. I thought maybe I'd marry Robert. Is that bad? She tried to look innocent and appealing, but it only backfired with Robert. We were cohabitating because we talked about marriage someday, but now I just can't believe you. Brittany, realizing Robert was genuinely angry, quickly switched tactics. No, this is a misunderstanding. I was just teaching him about streaming, like personal training for the digital age. Brittany seemed to think we knew nothing about influencers or video streaming, and was clearly trying to bluff her way through. Despite her desperate attempts to wriggle out of the situation, Robert wasn't having any of it. Private lessons, is that it? Have you already forgotten what you yourself said earlier? I played the cheesy dialogue I had secretly recorded at high volume. Hey! You recorded this without me knowing? That's a violation of privacy. Delete it now. Privacy? You have no right to talk about privacy. I'm filing for divorce. Tony, clearly not expecting me to initiate a divorce, was panicking. Divorce? How are you going to live without me? You're living off me, and now you're talking about divorce? Have you lost your mind? He seemed to think I would break down and beg him. His male superiority mindset was apparent, still in disbelief over the current situation. His absolute confidence baffled me, but it didn't matter anymore. Say whatever you want. You can only act tough for so long. Eventually, we got divorced. After the incident, I immediately sought a lawyer who is an expert in divorce and infidelity cases. Presenting the evidence video helped me demand more than the usual alimony. Meanwhile, Brittany's engagement with Robert was called off, and she now lives a secluded life. This is partly because her streaming blew up after the affair scandal. Right after the infidelity news broke, fans analyzed Brittany's posts, exposing her relationship with Tony. The fans' sharp eyes discerned details from subtle reflections and background elements in her posts. The posts and their hints led to the discovery of her affair with him. The scandal affected Tony too. His company received numerous calls, forcing them to acknowledge the situation. He was fired, for his company took the situation seriously. The company must have wanted to get rid of the trouble. I guess so. After all, a high-profile influencer's affair with a married corporate employee from major enterprise was criticized heavily. When the company's stock dipped around the time of the scandal, they couldn't ignore it any longer. Now, he struggles with the public's disdain and rarely goes out, a consequence of his own actions. He's often the subject of online posts, making it risky for him to venture outside. I ran into Brittany once after the turmoil. She appeared as if waiting for me while I shopped at a grocery store near my workplace. How come you're living comfortably off a big settlement while I suffer? Isn't that unfair? Her audacity was typical. There's nothing unfair about it. It's all the result of your actions. I have nothing to say to you. And what's with your high and mighty attitude? Because of you, my engagement was broken off. She approached me, growing more agitated. I was so close to marrying a doctor. Just stop it, will you? You've been secretly having an affair while engaged, and yet you're playing the victim. I can't understand your logic. You should mind your behavior. What do you know? You're the one who's the talk of the internet now. If someone sees this, it'll end up online again. Realizing the risk, Brittany quickly covered herself with her hood and left in a hurry. Since separating from Tony, I've been enjoying my single life. Living at my own pace is wonderful. I've returned to my nursing job, surprisingly recalling much of my previous knowledge. Surprisingly, my body seems to remember, and I am able to do a certain amount of things. Though I once doubted my future, I now live a fulfilling life, forgetting Tony and Brittany as my form of revenge. You know, I remarried a beautiful and young woman unlike you. My ex-husband Duke said to me with a vulgar smile. It's only been a week since our divorce, and he's already remarried. He probably was cheating on me even while we were married. For a while after we got married, Duke and I were a happy couple. We both loved kids and were conscious about having them right from the start of our marriage. I can't wait to have kids. I want a daughter and a son, Duke would say excitedly, imagining our future. But we struggled to conceive. Gradually, our relationship soured, and we ended up hating each other and divorced. A week later, I ran into him at a shopping mall, where I went to distract myself. My name is Lynn, a woman in her 30s and a corporate employee. I met Duke, who's 4 years older than me, through friends, and got married 3 years ago. Duke and I both loved kids and wanted to start a family early. I really hope we have kids soon. I'd like a daughter and a son, Duke used to say. Yeah, I don't mind the gender as long as they're healthy. But I do want more than 2, I would respond. We happily talked about what our kids might look like, what their personalities would be like, eagerly awaiting their arrival. However, even after 1 year, then 2, we couldn't conceive. During the first year, Duke said, "It didn't work out again. But no rush, we'll be fine." But after the second year, he started to become bitter. "What, it didn't work out again? Someone I know had a baby just 2 months after getting married. Why can't we have one?" He complained. I don't know what to say. Our relationship deteriorated from that point. Duke's behavior became harsher, and I couldn't handle it alone anymore. I often confided in my best friend Johanna. Johanna always listened seriously to my problems. "I see. Duke really wants a child, so I understand his disappointment. But he should be more considerate of you," she said sympathetically. "I know. He's changed so much. He used to be so kind," I said, reminiscing about the old Duke and sighing deeply. Johanna and I shared our deepest troubles with each other, things we couldn't tell anyone else. Time passed, and we still couldn't have children. Before we knew it, 3 years of marriage had gone by. Realizing that natural conception might be impossible, I decided to suggest fertility treatments to Duke. After dinner and while drinking coffee, I approached Duke. "Hey, Duke. We haven't had a child in 3 years, right? I'm 34 now, so maybe it's time to consider fertility treatments?" Duke's face showed blatant annoyance at my words. "Fertility treatments? Isn't it because you're getting old and decrepit that we can't have kids? If you're gonna do it alone. That's not something you can just say." I was taken aback by his harsh response and was at a loss for words. "I'm not doing it. There's no way the problem is with me." Duke spat out those words and immediately left for the bedroom. Left alone, I stood there stunned. Does Duke not want to cooperate at all? I muttered, filled with a mix of emptiness and sadness. With no other choice, I decided to visit a fertility clinic alone. After a thorough examination. "Where's your husband? It's important to have his cooperation. Infertility issues are often on the male side. Make sure he comes with you next time," the doctor asked. Encouraged by the doctor's words, I tried to discuss fertility treatments with Duke again that night. "Fertility treatments won't work if it's just me. You need to get tested too. Can you please come to the hospital with me?" "Are you saying it's my fault? It's obviously you, the woman, who's the problem. I have nothing to do with it. I told you to do it alone if you're going to do it. Don't drag me into this." Duke exploded in anger. But infertility often lies on the male side. If the doctor said so, it must be true. The doctor also said that the husband needs to cooperate. "Please, Duke, come to the hospital with me." I tried desperately to persuade Duke. Despite his irritation. "Fine, I'll go. Just stop nagging." Duke eventually agreed, albeit grudgingly. A few days later, I took Duke to the fertility clinic. After his examination, Duke emerged from the testing room looking irritated, his face twisted in frustration. We were waiting in the reception area to hear both my previous results and Duke's recent test. Due to the clinic's busy schedule, we were not called for a while. Being impatient, Duke abruptly stood up and said, "I'm leaving." He ignored my attempts to stop him and left alone. I had no choice but to hear the results alone. Finally called in, the doctor's revelation left me in shock. "I need to tell Duke." I rushed home, opened the door, and said, "I'm back." I washed my hands and headed to the living room, where an infuriated Duke awaited. "What's wrong? Hey! What are you playing at? I thought infertility testing would be simpler, but why did I have to go through that? It was humiliating." It seemed Duke was upset about the nature of the male fertility test. "Well, we need to do proper tests to find out why we can't have kids. About the test results." Duke cut me off mid-sentence, shouting angrily, "This is all because you're old and can't have kids. I can't take this anymore. I'm divorcing you. What are you talking about all of a sudden?" I was shocked by Duke's sudden declaration of divorce and raised my voice in surprise. I can't live with an infertile old woman anymore. Fed up with Duke's abusive language and constant belittling about my infertility, I felt my feelings for him cooled in that moment. Fine. Let's divorce. Ha, I'm glad you agree so easily. Get out, you infertile old woman. I silently packed my things and left the house. I decided to stay at my parents' house for a while. They welcomed me warmly, which I was very grateful for. I filled out my part of the divorce papers as soon as I got there and sent them to Duke. We had been married for 3 years. Duke was a kind and good husband in the beginning. There were many happy memories. But the Duke I loved was no longer there. Remembering the ugly face of Duke, who insulted and pushed for divorce, filled me with sadness and intense anger. I didn't have any love left for Duke. A week later, I went to a large shopping mall for a change of scenery. That's when I saw a familiar profile. Ugh. And I involuntarily muttered. I tried to leave unnoticed, but Duke saw me. Isn't that Lynn? Duke noticed me and called out. I ignored him and started walking away. Wait. He grabbed my arm. Let go. Duke looked at me with a vile smile. Following me? Can't forget about me, huh? What? His off-base comment left me dumbfounded. I've remarried a beautiful, young woman. I have no need for an infertile old woman, so disappear. Duke laughed rudely, looking down on me. The fact that he stopped me just to tell me to disappear infuriated me. It had only been a week since our divorce, but he was already remarried. I realized then that Duke must have been cheating on me. The deterioration of our marriage wasn't just because we couldn't have kids, it was also because of Duke's affair. He must have been confident about divorcing because he had the option of remarrying his mistress. What a terrible man. As I frowned, a coquettish voice caught my attention. Duke, who are you talking to? The voice belonged to a woman with blonde hair, heavy makeup, and revealing clothes. She was also adorned with designer bags and accessories and held shopping bags from brand stores. Finished shopping? This is my ex-wife. The infamous ex-wife. The woman looked down on me with a scornful gaze. I recognized her from somewhere. Who was she? I was on the verge of remembering. When Duke triumphantly introduced her. Lynn, let me introduce you. This is my wife, Pamela. Beautiful and young, right? Hi, I'm Pamela, Duke's new wife. 25 years old. At that moment, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. So, it was that Pamela. Finally remembering, I couldn't stop the laughter that welled up inside me. Seeing me laughing uproariously, Pamela and Duke looked at me with puzzled expressions. Still laughing, I told Duke. I feel sorry for you. I'm busy, so I'm going now, LOL. Duke hurriedly tried to stop me as I was about to leave. Hey! What do you mean you feel sorry for me? Is that your way of admitting defeat? Admitting defeat? No way. Then what is it? Spit it out. Duke asked irritably. All right, I'll tell you. I turned to Pamela. I know who you are. I said. What? I don't know a dull, uninteresting, old woman like you. Pamela retorted, looking puzzled. What a rude thing to say. I asked Pamela coldly. Do you know a woman named Johanna? Johanna? Ah. It seemed she remembered. Pamela's face turned pale. Johanna? Isn't she Lynn's best friend? What does Pamela have to do with Johanna? Duke asked anxiously. I declared. She's the bar employee who tricked Johanna's boyfriend into spending money on her. And she dumped him the moment he ran out of money. What? Duke's eyes widened in disbelief. I heard from Johanna that her boyfriend had been deceived and spent money on a bar employee named Pamela. Despite the bar explaining it was just part of the job, he believed they were truly in love and bought her expensive bags and designer watches. Johanna decided she didn't need a man who could be deceived by a bar employee. She had shown me a photo of this woman, Pamela. Johanna's naive boyfriend believed Pamela's seductive words, but Pamela went as far as having physical relationships outside the bar and even checking houses to live after they were married. And there were multiple men she did this to. It wasn't just Johanna's boyfriend. You seem to have manipulated several men, a trade company executive, a small construction company CEO, and a county administrator, right? But when they started holding back on spending, you cut ties with them. Duke, aren't you being deceived too? Are you sure you're okay? That's a lie. There's no way that's true. You're just making up lies because you're bitter, aren't you? Stop kidding around. Duke was furious, refusing to listen to my warning. Exactly. I would never do such a thing. I don't even know who Johanna is, and I've never made her boyfriend spend money on me. Everything you're saying is a lie. You're just jealous because I'm beautiful, right? Pamela confidently lied and shouted back at me. That's right. Lynn is just jealous of Pamela and making up stories, right? Infertile old hag you are, so ugly. Infertile old hag, that's funny. You're truly pathetic. Go away, you old woman. Taking advantage of my silence, Pamela and Duke unleashed a barrage of insults at me. Finding the situation ridiculous, I said, "You don't have to believe me. I truly don't care about Duke anymore. Anyway, I wish you happiness." And left the scene. From behind me, "It's all lies, right? Pamela, you're not deceiving me, are you?" Followed by Pamela's voice. "Of course, it's a lie. Believe in me. Everything that old woman said was a lie." I heard. A few days later, I met Johanna and told her about the incident. Pamela remarried Duke. I was shocked when I heard you divorced Duke, but I never imagined he would marry that woman. Johanna was visibly surprised, her eyes and mouth wide open. Yes, it's true. It's a small world, isn't it? Indeed. But Duke, he's going to suffer. Knowing how Duke had treated me, Johanna smiled as if feeling relieved. I think Duke will end up in a miserable situation. Right now, he's completely infatuated with her. We laughed together. Sometime later, after work, I was about to head home as usual. Suddenly, "Lynn." I heard a listless voice from behind. I was startled and turned around to see Duke standing there. "What do you want? Don't scare me like that. What are you doing here?" "Lend me some money." "What?" Duke looked much thinner than before, almost haggard, with sunken cheeks and eyes. His wrinkled clothes made him appear pitiful. I could guess the situation from his appearance and request. "So, you're exhausted in every way because of that Pamela." "Exactly. Just like you said. She just milked me for all I had, and the moment my savings ran out, she left me and filed for divorce." Just as I had warned, Pamela had married Duke for his money and left him as soon as it ran out. Foolish. I warned you politely, didn't I? I should have listened carefully to what you said. You know how much I spent on her? She's the worst. Don't you think I'm a victim? I was deceived, I'm the victim here. What? His claim of being a victim was astonishing. It was all his responsibility. Because she stripped me of everything, I can't even pay this month's rent, let alone the utilities. I'm sorry to ask, but can you lend me some money for my living expenses? If this continues, I'll become homeless. Duke's blatant opportunism left me utterly dismayed. Actually, I want to get back together with you, Lynn. Please reconcile with me. I realized your worth after being deceived by Pamela. Marry me again. It's a lifetime request. Marry me again. Duke begged tearfully. I looked at him coldly. Sorry, but I refuse. What? Why? Why? Have you forgotten how you treated me? I don't like you at all anymore. I hate you so much I don't even want to see your face. There's no chance of us getting back together. Duke turned red with rage. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm offering to reconcile with you, an infertile woman. Be grateful. Hearing Duke's words, I laughed. Why are you laughing? I just thought how mistaken you are, lol. Mistaken? Duke asked, puzzled. The infertility issue wasn't with me, it was with you, Duke. What? Duke was speechless. You left the hospital without hearing the test results. I was going to tell you that night, but you started talking about divorce and never listened. The results showed you have almost no fertility, and natural conception is almost impossible. I, on the other hand, had no issues. That's a lie! It can't be true! There's no way I'm the cause of infertility! It's definitely you! Duke ranted, refusing to believe. I've never been sick, so how can I be infertile? It must be you! If you think it's a lie, go to the hospital and hear it yourself. I replied calmly. Is it true? No, it can't be. I can't be infertile. Duke was in total disarray, sweating profusely. He never thought the issue was with him. So, go and hear it directly from the doctor. If you plan to marry someone else in the future, it's better to know about your body. I said and left. Duke went to the clinic and learned the truth about his infertility. He called me several times, but I ignored them all. He then left voicemails. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's start over. Answer the phone. Please. I have no money. I'm in deep debt. Help me, Lynn. I deleted all his messages and blocked his phone number. A few days after blocking him, I was ambushed by Duke in front of my office. Lynn, please. Even if we don't reconcile, just lend me some money. I'm not asking for much, just $10,000. No, even $5,000 will do. Please. We were married once, right? Duke pleaded with deep apologies. Stop this right here. I'm not lending you any money. Go back right now, or I'll call the police. Even as I warned him, Duke persisted. Just lend me the money. So, I really called the police to deal with him. Perhaps the shock of the police being called or the fear of increased patrols deterred him. After that, he never showed up in front of me again. Duke, struggling financially and accumulating more debt, moved to a very old apartment and worked part-time at a grocery store late into the night to make ends meet. However, the strain took its toll, and he started making mistakes continuously at work. Unable to handle his main job while doing a side job, he was looked down upon and felt quite uncomfortable. Meanwhile, I've almost completely moved on from the shock of the divorce and am working energetically every day. I had relied quite a bit on my parents, but now I've moved to an apartment near my company and am enjoying living alone without any concerns. Recently, Johanna and I went on a long-planned trip where I met a man and started dating him. It was a long-distance relationship, but last month he got transferred to a branch near my home. He asked me, "Would you like to get married?" So, it looks like I'm going to be quite busy from now on. You're a bad woman, dear. Isn't it the same for you, listening to such a bad woman? By the way, is everything okay with Jane? It's fine. I just can't see her as a woman anymore. For Michael and Linda, it was definitely not the first meeting with each other, but the moment we were alone, that is what it comes to. I felt something boiling up from the bottom of my stomach. Leaving them, the three of us headed to the Botanical and Zoological Park. It was a perfect day for a drive. As we entered the main road, Lisa said, "Oh, right. What's up?" "Mom, I made sure the doors were locked." At that moment, probably both Nick and I froze. What she was talking about was the entrance to the basement where the two should be. My name is Jane, a 35-year-old housewife. Currently living with my 2 years older husband, Michael, and our 8-year-old daughter, Lisa. I've thought about having another child. But there were two reasons why it ended up being just Lisa. One of the reasons was that I couldn't dream of having siblings myself. I have one sister, Linda. Our parents obviously favored her more, even to an outsider's eyes. I didn't like our parents for favoring just Linda, nor did I like myself for resenting her. That's why I was scared to give Lisa a sister. Linda has been pretty since she was little, even from a younger sister's point of view. Bright colored clothes suits her with a nice body. She has always been smiling and good at acting cute. On the other hand, I've looked so plain. No makeup or clothes suited me, which my mother was bored. Oh boy, you never look pretty with any items. I hated her size for that. The main reason I went to a university in urban and looked for a job was to get away from home, my parents, and Linda. Linda recently returned our family home again. I learned about it from a phone call from my mother. What's up? It's rare for you to call. Well, you see, Linda's come back again. Again? Linda had been married twice before. The first time was right after graduating from university. Frankly, it was a shotgun wedding. A marriage of necessity, though these days they say blessed with a child. At the time, Linda's situation was really one of no choice. Her partner was 5 years older than her. They met at a group blind date, and Linda aggressively approached him. As a result, she got pregnant before getting a job and ended up marrying. Her first husband was a decent marriage partner, even in our parents' eyes. His parents were initially happy to have a beautiful wife for their son. However, Linda showed her true colors soon enough. Before 5 years were up, her spending habits kicked in, depleting the savings meant for their future home. When her first husband could no longer trust her, he brought up divorce. However, since their son Nick was still young, custody went to Linda. Nick's father was extremely frustrated. But she was with her next husband for quite a while, wasn't she? What happened? Well, you see, she cheated. My mother's voice was heavy. A year after her divorce, Linda quickly found someone else and remarried thanks to being in her 20s. A beautiful divorcee with a child made a difference. Her next partner was the manager of the part-time job she was working at. Her appearance and charm played a big part again. After the marriage to the store manager, she quit her part-time job to care about rumors. I told her to stop overspending this time. But you know. Well, the spending did decrease somewhat. The income of her new husband was less than the first one. In fact, he had inherited a house after losing his parents early. Maybe Linda's aim was there. No need to spend on a future home, but if she did it again, she'd lose her place to live. But you know, it was fine until Nick was in elementary school. What does that mean? As you know, the interactions between parents or attending school events decreased as Nick was grown up. I nodded deeply. Certainly, being busy with such interactions doesn't leave much free time. Then, Linda had time on her hands. Wait, time on her hands and she cheated? Well, yeah. She always picks good men as husbands, but as for being attractive as men, I was astonished. Can a mother say such a thing? So now, Linda and Nick are staying at our house. By the way, she got divorced because of cheating, right? Could she pay the compensation from the divorce trial? Do you think she could pay? We had no choice but to cover it from our side. So, it wasn't just a temporary cover. As usual, too lenient. Oh, Jane, she said she'd come to visit your place sometimes. What? You're joking. Why do I have to entertain her now? What are you saying? She's your only sister. Oh man, start it again. You've always been cold-hearted. Linda said so too. You hardly ever come back home. That's true. Why would I need to return to a place where I'm uncomfortable? Please, think about Nick. He's had to change schools so many times and seems so uncomfortable. I was at a loss for words when she mentioned that. Nick really is a good kid. Eventually, Linda and Nick started coming to our house frequently. Ironically, we now live in the neighboring city to our hometown, just an hour's drive away. Having Linda as a sister made me lose interest in having siblings and not want more children. The other reason was that after giving birth, my relationship with Michael became less intimate. It started with a job transfer and moving. Originally, we lived near the city center when we first got married. But around the time I finished pregnancy and childbirth, Michael got suddenly transferred. The place we moved to was Denver. Then he suddenly said, "This house looks very nice. Let's purchase it." The house was located in the eastern edge of Denver. We ended up living an hour's drive from our parents' home on the west end. The house had a basement, which he was most into. I've always wanted a studio. That was news to me. I knew he was into art. He chose art museums for our dates before we got married. But I never thought he'd paint himself. Oh? Didn't I mention it? I was in the art club in high school and wanted to go to art college. However, the costly tuition fee for art colleges were impossible for his family. It seemed to be a lingering regret for him. When purchasing own house, he always wanted a studio. But why basement? I need stable lighting from above, facing north. Actually, that was a semi-basement with the first floor raised. The studio was placed where there were light well windows. But it was too big only for the studio, so I decided to use half the room near the stairs as storage. As soon as we moved, I gathered various things and stored them there. Also, it became a place for occasional outdoor gear and my homemade wine. The studio's inner door is solid, lockable from both inside and outside. Once locked from the inside, it's Michael's dream space. On the other hand, the storage entrance has a very simple latch. Given the solid inner door, we didn't put much emphasis on the storage door. Michael started spending more and more time in that basement. "Hey Mom, Dad doesn't play with me much since we moved here." I could only sigh at Lisa's sad words. It was still okay when it was newly built, but gradually he brought in a small fridge, a single bed, and a tablet. He often stayed overnight on the eve of holidays, only coming up for the bathroom and bath on the first floor. "Why don't you take Lisa to the amusement park sometime? You want to take away my only pleasure? This is how I refresh to keep going at work every day." The number of arguments increased, and our marital life decreased. I spent my days on the upper floor with Lisa. We originally had 2 semi-double beds, but one was often unused. I frequently ended up sleeping with Lisa. Amidst all that, Linda started imposing herself on my place. Besides, she brought her son Nick with her. "It's a bit strict at our place, but yours is spacious. Nick can study, right?" Saying that, she'd leave Nick and go out. He would diligently do his homework and revision or entertain Lisa, waiting for his mother to return. One day, Linda noticed our basement. "Oh, what's this?" "It's Michael's studio. You'll get in trouble if you go in, so stay out, Linda." A studio. Michael paints?" She only said that much at the time. But that day, unlike usual, she stayed until night. At the dinner table, which I had cooked a lot, I started those conversation. "So, Michael, I hear you paint." "Oh, yes." A bit embarrassing to admit. "There's nothing embarrassing about it. It's a wonderful hobby." "Thanks, but my wife here, she doesn't really appreciate it." "But you know, art is something that's not easily understood by the average person." I felt uneasy at Linda's sweet words. "Do you paint landscapes?" "Currently, yes. Landscapes are still lives. I used to enjoy painting portraits in high school." "Portraits, you say?" Her eyes widened. "Then, may I model for you?" "Huh? Are you sure, Linda?" "I've always wanted someone to paint a portrait of me." "But Linda, aren't you job hunting right now?" Right, that's her excuse for driving around during the day. "What are you talking about? Even if I'm job hunting, I have days off, right?" "That's true, weekends are free for me too." "Jane, you probably don't know about modeling fees. It's really helpful when someone close offers to model." "Wait, what about our picnic next weekend?" True, we were planning to go to the nearby botanical and zoological park for a picnic, a long-awaited trip. Then Nick chimed in. "Hey Lisa, would you mind if I joined?" "You coming?" "Yeah. I've always wanted to visit that botanical and zoological park." "That's right, Jane. Michael's busy with me, so why don't you go with our Nick?" Linda chuckled and smirked at me. I understand. This woman is targeting my husband, just like in the past. Then, shall we discuss it now? Sure. And leaving dinner somewhat unfinished, Michael and Linda headed down to the basement. Left behind, we continued eating with 2 plates of leftovers in front of us. Sorry about Mom. Nick expressed his apology to me. There's no need for you to apologize, Nick. Besides, it's just modeling. Do you believe so? He gave a wry, mature smile. After a silent meal, he stood beside me to help with the dishes. Thanks, that helps. No problem, I'm used to it. He took the job of wiping and putting away the dishes, but he seemed to have something on his mind. What's wrong? Listen, Jane. Actually. He looked at me with a kind of desperation. Do you have something you want to tell me? I lowered my voice. Right, he must have offered to help to tell me something he didn't want Lisa to hear. Mom always lures men like that. You knew that? Yes. She even kicked me out of the house to cheat on someone recently. I shivered. Really? Yes. My dad was very dedicated to his work and treated me like his own son. But he often worked late into the night. Taking advantage of that, Mom brought a man home. So, I took photos and recorded their voices and told Dad. He bit his lip. I was so frustrated, thinking about how good my dad was. He clenched the cloth in his hand. Then Dad thanked me for telling him, and he started the divorce proceedings. So, you were the reason for their divorce? Yes. I felt sorry for that poor man being deceived by Mom. He didn't tell anyone that the evidence came from me. He couldn't take me in, but at least he didn't want to make my position worse. I see. Now, you're telling me that because you want me to do something? I think you should go check on them downstairs in a little while. Okay, I will. I replied. Then for 2 hours, Nick kept Lisa entertained with games. I like you very much, Nick. Nick, the well-behaved child, was excellent at handling Lisa. During breaks in the game, they searched the botanical and zoological park on the tablet, exciting her with what's there and what they'll see. As they happily played, I quietly headed down to the basement. Both the storage entrance and the inner door were left open. I silently and without turning on the light, entered the storage area, and crept towards a spot where I could see inside. What I saw was Linda sitting on a still life stand, embracing Michael. Even from a distance, I could see that the buttons on Linda's blouse were undone. You're a bad woman, dear. Aren't you the same, listening to such a bad woman? By the way, is everything okay with Jane? It's fine. I can't even think of her as a woman anymore. Laughing together in low voices, the unbearable sounds continued. It was definitely not the first meeting for them. So, this is what happens when they're alone. I felt something boiling up from deep within. But I didn't barge in angrily at that moment. The phrase art model is convenient. Even if Linda was dressed like that, she'd probably calmly say, "There's such a thing as a nude model, right?" Moreover, Michael would defend it with and say, "It's to understand the body's lines." I needed something more conclusive. Quietly, I went back outside and up the stairs. Seeing me return, Nick simply told me, "See? Just like I said. What will you do, Jane?" His tone was mature and unemotional. I've thought of something. Okay. I'll prepare myself too. Then, the weekend arrived. It was Saturday with a clear sky, and warmer than expected. Maybe we can have lunch on the grass at the Botanical and Zoological Park, I thought, searching the storage for outdoor gear with Lisa. By that time, the inner door was already closed. Although Linda brought Nick, she quickly entered Michael's studio and closed the door. We couldn't tell what was happening behind that door. What do we have here? Let's see, a sheet and a pop-up tent in case the wind picks up, plus pegs. Also, ropes so it doesn't fly away. Jane, is the tent okay? We'll ask at the entrance later. We continued chatting while carrying things out. Nick and I had our hands full, so we left the door open. Then, we got in the car and drove off. It was really a great day for a drive. As we entered the main road, suddenly Lisa said, "Oh, right. What's up?" "Mom, I locked the door." "Huh?" "Well, you guys both had your hands full. It's not good to leave the door open when we're leaving." At that moment, probably both Nick and I froze. Lisa knew about the studio but didn't understand what kind of place it was. Michael takes care of all the cleaning and has told me not to touch anything. So, during the day, I usually lock the inner door to prevent Lisa from moving anything. But today, "Hey Lisa, why did you lock the storage door?" Nick asked her. "Well, earlier, the door of the usually well-closed inner room was swinging." "Hey Mom, you always lock the inner room, right?" "But I don't know where the key for that is. So I thought locking it from the outside would be okay." "Okay, I see. The inner door has a proper lock. But the outer one is just a latch, so even Lisa could lock it." "I see. That makes sense." I visualized the situation and felt a smile spreading on my face. Then I said to them, "Hey guys, let's go see Dad's parents after this, okay?" "Wow, really? Is that okay?" That was the plan. Going to my in-laws' house was part of it. But I added, "It's been a while, let's stay overnight." In the next evening, after having a delightful time and enjoying every meal at my in-laws' house, it's time to head back. No, not yet. Michael's father George and I was arguing about staying longer. Then, my smartphone rang. "Hello." "What?" "The police?" "What's up, Jane?" "Put it on speaker, will you?" Following George's request, I switched to speaker and answered the call. "Is this Jane's phone?" "Yes, this is Jane." There seemed to be noise in the background of the police officer, with ambulance sirens blaring. "What happened?" "Well, we received a report from your neighbors about sounds of breaking glass and bad smell coming from your basement." "What?" I was surprised and got aloud. "What's going on?" "Michael was staying today, right?" "Yeah, but why?" I said to George, "My in-laws are truly kind people. They rarely can't see their granddaughter Lisa, but they adore her. The only concern of them is that they shared their complaints about Michael, who suddenly had bought a faraway house, over the phone. Honestly, compared to my parents, they're much more reasonable people. They even warmly welcome Nick, who's technically just my nephew." I asked the police, "So, what exactly happened?" "Yes, it seems Michael broke the window." "Could you explain a bit more?" "I'll give you the details in sequence." "Then we'll go play games over there." "Okay." Sensing the situation, Nick took Lisa away. It was indeed not a conversation for Lisa to hear. Then the police officer began to explain to us. A neighbor was startled by the sound of breaking glass and peeked into our house. The neighbor hesitated at first, but knew with each other well, so entered the yard to find the source of the noise. She discovered it was the window of our usually unnoticed basement. In a panic, she peered through the broken window and smelled something awful. Then she saw a naked man and woman, wrapped in blankets and sheets, writhing in pain. Soon after, she hurriedly called the police. One of the naked people was identified as Michael. My in-laws' faces twisted as they listened. "What on earth is he doing?" Ignoring George's anger, I continued. "We're hearing the ambulance siren there?" "Yes." When we approached, we were told they were trapped and injured, so we called an ambulance and a rescue team. What a big operation. My in-laws sighed more heavily. We removed a window pane due to security considerations, as the front door was locked, and sent in a team to rescue the two. "Thank you. But what kind of injuries?" "Michael apparently fell from a stand trying to climb out of the window and hurt his back." My in-laws looked shocked, their mouths gaping. Then, I asked something else that needed to be confirmed. "The other woman, is her name Linda by any chance?" "She's my sister." "Okay, your sister, she is." The police officer hesitated. "What's wrong?" Yes, she identified herself as Linda. We've already contacted your family about this, but the source of the bad smell was her." Excuse me? It seems she had a stomach upset, maybe due to the cold or drinking too much beer. She was naked and had defecated. There's a lot of excrement scattered in your basement. I'm sorry. Apparently, they tried to clean themselves with the stored drinking water in the storage. It spread all over the floor and soaked into the clothes they had left behind, affecting both of them. My in-laws grimaced at the mention of the clothes. Where is my husband now? Which hospital? Let's see. The police gave the hospital name and address and hung up. I couldn't quite comprehend what was happening. I should say, I was aware we had locked them in. I thought there would be solid evidence of the affair, and we could thoroughly check the studio later. However, that was unexpected. Certainly, if locked in, they couldn't use the toilet. To think it led to such a big incident with the police, ambulance, and rescue team. Jane, are you all right? Realizing the call had ended, Nick rushed over and shook me. Then he suddenly apologized toward my in-laws. I'm so sorry for what my mom did. Right, I needed to play the responding to his questions. Nick, did you hear that? I heard Linda's name. Sorry, that's my mom. She was targeting Michael. What? So, she said she'd model. I deliberately raised my voice. Yes, and she tried to let us go out. That's terrible. I'm so sorry. No, you're not the one. Apologize for such things. George, could you guys please go to see Michael now? That's right. I have to listen to the situation exactly. What about you, Jane? I'm not sure what to do now. I'm too shaken and might cause an accident if I drive. Okay, all right. We'll go check on him. Thank you. After they left, Nick and I exchanged a firm handshake, completing our charade. 2 weeks later, my lawyer reported things were likely to go smoothly. Indeed, I had been staying at my in-laws and making my next move. First, I called the neighbor Nancy, who discovered the situation, asking for detailed descriptions of when the two were rescued. Nancy is a gossip lover and skilled in quickly spreading what she sees and hears. I had always maintained a good relationship to avoid any bad rumors, but who knew it would come in handy like this? Oh dear, a police car and an ambulance in a residential area? The place was crowded with onlookers. And your husband, well, how should I say? I urged her to continue. And that other woman. She smelled so bad. What did she eat to produce such a stench? Upon revealing the woman was my sister. That's shocking. So, your sister seduced your husband. She sounded almost excited. So, I replied with a feigned and strong voice. It seems to be the case. While she expressed sympathy, her excitement was unmistakable. Thanks to her, I knew there were many witnesses to the affair. My words about the neighbors watching would spread quickly among them. Next, I sought a lawyer for the divorce and to get a restraining order against Linda. I couldn't stand the sight of Michael. I decided to settle everything through the lawyer. What about going home? Lisa asked. Thieves broke into our house. I explained. Well, they were thieves, in a way. Thieves took Dad away. She tilted her head, seemingly confused. She had lost expectations and familiarity with a father who'd stopped playing with her. Meanwhile, Michael's incessant calls were unrelenting. Ignoring them, I recorded his voicemails. Apparently, he broke his back in the fall and had to be hospitalized. According to my in-laws, both Linda and Michael smelled terrible. I'm utterly disappointed at Michael, lamented Michael's mother Mia, who fiercely lectured them in the hospital. George also disgusted and considered severing ties with him. Their scolding probably fueled the flood of messages from Michael. What's this? I'm hurt. Why aren't you showing up? Did you lock me in? A lawyer came, divorce? No way. What? Lisa locked the door. Hey. Why is there a video circulating online? Did you do something? Fine, I'll agree to the divorce, but isn't the expense too much? Please, I beg you. Can't you lower the compensation? Nobody wants to buy the house with the basement in this state. Please, just answer the phone once. His voice was tearful toward the end. I do get calls from Linda. But since it's just incomprehensible ranting, I turn the volume down as soon as I recognize her voice. I can't let Lisa hear such foul language. On the other hand, Nick managed to contact his biological father. Mom never gave me his cell number, but Grandma had told me the home phone number. She said to call it in case of an emergency. Emergency? Yeah. Grandma was really upset she couldn't get custody from Mom. She said there was something missing back then, and I ended up going with Mom. I see. But after what happened this time, I think she's definitely not fit to be a parent anymore. I hope that's the case. He said with determination in his voice. Mom always complained about my housework. Even so, she wouldn't help me. Really? Yeah, thanks to that, I can do many things by myself, though. I couldn't help but feel sorry for him. My real dad was against it, so just for that, I've always wanted to go with him. He said, I see. So, thank you for giving me this chance. I should thank you. You know, your mom always liked to take things that were mine. He looked up to the sky. But you know, it's not about things, it's about people. You can't get caught up in that. At least he has a family, he shouldn't be tempted. He's no good otherwise. I continued to him. Therefore, we both got rid of something bad and feel refreshed, don't we? As for the two of them, my divorce went through. I got full custody of Lisa, and it was decided I would receive property distribution, compensation, and child support. Michael decided to sell the dream house to make payments. But the house, especially the basement, was in such a bad state, so it got lowballed. See? I say he is foolish. He is supposed to make studios and studies after the kids move out. His father George said, but Michael's parents both still want to see their grandchild. I've been well taken care of by them, so I plan to keep in touch. Meanwhile, Linda and our parents were furious after being sued for compensation in the divorce. When my lawyer said to Linda, by the way, Jane has renounced her inheritance. She wants nothing to do with you. If you do anything rash, she'll get a restraining order. Then unbelievably, she grabbed a vase and struck him with it. That's clearly assault, so she was charged and ended up behind bars for a short time. Our parents also had to sell their house to pay the additional compensation. That's what they get for spoiling her. Mom, I'm off. I'm leaving too. After that, I moved a bit further away. To a place far from my parents' house and the house I used to live in. Good morning. I say as I arrive at work. Hi, how are you? My current employer responds. He's Nick's father. I'm currently employed as an office worker at his company. It's not a big company, but it's a sincere business rooted in the community. On days off, Lisa asks to visit Nick at his father's place. They're grateful to me for giving Nick the chance to return. They are far better people than my own parents. Finally, days with people I can feel at peace with have arrived. From now on, I plan to live brightly and happily, mainly for Lisa's sake. The numbers don't add up. You've been cheating. Ben's angry voice echoes in my ears. Despite having just sipped a cafe latte, I feel terribly ill. I'm 10 months pregnant, and instead of showing remorse for making me drink milk, an allergen for me, Ben accuses me of infidelity. No, help me. I lack the energy to deny his suspicion clearly. My hoarse whisper bursts in front of him and fades away swiftly. Acting won't help you. I won't be fooled. It's not like your allergy is a big deal. Convinced that I'm cheating, he, seeing me in agony, doesn't help but leaves the house, still doubting me. What should I do? It's all over. With the last of my strength, I try to call someone on my mobile phone. But my weak hands let the phone slip away. Please. Someone help me. My name is Emma. I'm a 33-year-old housewife, living with my husband Ben, a classmate. We met through a mutual friend 2 years ago. Both past 30, we were already considering marriage, so when we met through our friend, we were acutely aware of each other as potential life partners. Ben works for a trading company, with a satisfying salary and handsome looks. Excuse me for asking, but why haven't you married until now? I knew it was blunt, but out of genuine curiosity, I asked him right there. Actually, I had a fiancé until 6 months ago, but it was called off. I was looking for a new partner since then. He answered cheerfully. I nodded in understanding. Being jilted must have been hard. I hadn't experienced it, but I could understand the pain in his heart. After that, we had a lively conversation about trivial things, like our hobbies and how we spend our days off. We shared interests in visiting art galleries and watching movies, making me feel that if we dated and married, we'd spend enjoyable days together. We hit it off and parted ways, agreeing to contact each other in a week. I was amazed at how quickly things progressed, but dating him felt comfortable, allowing me to be myself without undue stress. Being with him, I knew I could be myself. Instinctively feeling this, I started making moves on him. It seemed like he reciprocated my feelings, and just a month after meeting, we started dating. It was a whirlwind romance, totally different from any relationship I'd had before. But I already knew he was a good man, handsome and with a great income, so honestly, I wanted to secure him as my future partner. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and a year after we started dating, we got married. He proposed during a dinner on a cruise ship on my birthday. I have a milk allergy, so he made sure that my courses were prepared with soy milk instead. I really appreciated these thoughtful gestures from him. He was my pride and joy. Naturally, I accepted the engagement ring and carefully placed it on my left ring finger. I had dreamt of this moment, but having it become reality made me wonder if it was all a dream. That's how happy I was. I'll cherish you for life, Emma. He said, his cheeks slightly flushed from the wine, and kissed my cheek. That night was the epitome of happiness, savoring the joy of marrying him. Soon after, we registered our marriage and moved into our own place. How about near your parents' place, Emma? It's close to my work too, and it'll be reassuring, right? Really? That's great, thank you. Knowing I was an only child, he suggested living near my parents, thinking they'd worry. With the possibility of raising children in the future, I was truly grateful, as I'd likely need my parents' help. My family, including relatives, all lived nearby. As a child, my cousin Henry used to play with me a lot. So, starting a new life near my parents was a dream come true. After moving in, I quickly realized something about Ben. He didn't do any housework at all. But as I became a full-time housewife, I thought I was okay with it. However, as time passed, I realized he wasn't just avoiding chores, he was also making a mess everywhere. No matter how much I cleaned, it would quickly become untidy again. I did bring it up with him once. Hey, can you try to keep the room a bit tidier? Like, at least put your dirty clothes in the laundry basket? I tried to say it as gently as I could. But he didn't like being told what to do. It's bothersome, I don't want to, he replied curtly. Sighing, I picked up his scattered clothes. Aside from his messiness, there wasn't much else to complain about. On his days off, he would take me out on dates. We went to see movies we liked or visited limited-time art exhibits. It was a fulfilling married life. However, things started to change when I found out I was pregnant. When my period was unusually late, I checked and got a positive result. I immediately went to the OBGYN and was told I was pregnant. I was overjoyed at the thought of having a child with him. Just knowing I had the person I'd loved's child inside me made the world seem brighter. When Ben got home that day, I couldn't wait to share the big news. Guess what? I'm pregnant, I announced, unable to hide my excitement. Really? Ben seemed taken aback. Yes, really. I'm 2 months along. The baby will be here in 10 months, so we have some time, but it's so exciting. I noticed a cloud of confusion shadow his face. 2 months? Yes. He seemed to mull over something. What's wrong? Aren't you happy? Well, it's just that. Ben responded cryptically, leaving me hanging without any further explanation. Did he not want a child with me? We had casually discussed children before marriage, and he seemed eager to have as many as possible. So why wasn't he sharing my joy now? Despite feeling unsettled, the fact remained, I was pregnant. I tried to convince myself that he was just caught off guard. After all, it's often said that fatherhood takes time to sink in. It wouldn't be surprising if he needed time to adjust to the sudden news of pregnancy. But from that day on, he became noticeably distant. He offered no help with household chores, even as I struggled with morning sickness. I knew he wasn't keen on housework, but I had hoped he'd step up when I was in need. "I'm sorry, but I'm feeling really sick today. I don't think I can cook," I told Ben before he left for work. "What?" His response was far from sympathetic. "I've never cooked before, and you expect me to start now? Pregnancy isn't an illness. You're a stay-at-home wife, Emma. Your job is the household, sick or not. I go to work even when I'm not feeling well." He glared at me as if he was in the right. Sure, he went to work even when feeling under the weather, but everyone's condition is different. To me, barely able to get out of bed, his words felt harsh. "But I really can't move," I pleaded with him. He snorted dismissively. "Fine. I'll eat out today," he said, leaving the house. I never thought it would come to this. I sighed to myself. I had always believed that we would build a happy family together. But his attitude changed since my pregnancy was disheartening. Had I been so wrong about him? That night, he returned home drunk. I had barely eaten all day due to feeling nauseous. I hoped, maybe foolishly, that he might have brought something back for me to eat, but he came empty-handed. Given his recent behavior, I couldn't help but feel resigned to it. Was I just an afterthought to him? Could it be that he doesn't even want a child? That thought saddened me deeply. Even as morning sickness passed and I entered the stable period, his attitude didn't change. In fact, it felt like he became harsher as I got better. "One of these days, my colleagues want to come over to our place," he announced one day after work. "Colleagues? How many?" "5. Might be more. I want you to cook for them. Don't serve anything subpar. I don't want them to think my wife can't cook." "What? 5 is quite a lot. Can our place even accommodate that many? Plus, I don't think I can handle that much right now." Even though I was in a stable period, I didn't feel up to hosting and cooking for a large group. Besides cooking, there'd be a lot to manage. The thought of handling it all by myself was overwhelming. "It'll be fine, you're in your stable period now. So, this weekend, expect them. And remember, don't embarrass me." He said this nonchalantly and whistled his way to the bathroom. I was filled with anxiety. True to his word, he brought 5 colleagues over that weekend. 4 men and 1 woman, an odd balance that made me wonder. But considering he worked in sales at a trading company, maybe female employees were few. "Hi, I'm and looking forward to today." The only woman, and greeted cheerfully. With her long hair swept to the side and striking features, she was notably pretty. She looked to be in her late 20s, younger than me, and her elegance made me instantly nervous. "Nice to meet you. My husband always speaks highly of you all. I can't offer much, but please make yourselves at home." Trying to act the part of a boss's wife, I ushered everyone to their seats. As I started preparing the meal in the kitchen, Ben and his 6 guests chatted about work and rumors. And seemed to be the life of the party, nodding and interjecting with sharp comments. I felt entirely out of place in that circle. Resolved to stay in the background, I continued my work quietly. When I served the meal, everyone seemed to enjoy it. "Is this cream stew made with soy milk?" and asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Yes, that's right. I'm allergic to milk, so I use soy milk for dishes that usually require it." Interesting. And seemed to accept my explanation and resumed eating. "Come on, just because you're allergic to milk doesn't mean you should serve our guests with soy milk. Use real milk next time." Ben chimed in. Expecting such a remark, I couldn't help but sigh. I need to eat too, so it has to be soy milk. You could have made separate dishes, he retorted. But I can't taste it if I do that. Our colleagues looked on, shocked by our conversation. Sorry, everyone. She claims to be allergic to milk. It's probably just a preference. Ben scoffed. The colleagues seemed uncomfortable, not sure how to react. Soy milk is delicious too. Please, enjoy your meal while it's hot, I said, trying to keep the mood light. Only seemed deep in thought, remaining silent. The dinner went by, leaving me exhausted. I hoped he might thank me, but he just went to bed without a word. Our communication had dwindled. And this, along with his dismissive remarks about my allergy, made me feel increasingly frustrated. Months passed, and I was now 10 months pregnant. He kept coming home late, and we barely talked. The absence of our previous joyful dates filled me with loneliness. As the baby's arrival neared, I longed to cherish our time together. But he never initiated any moments like that. Then one day, he entered the living room, carrying a large bag and a familiar cup. It was from a coffee chain we used to frequent during happier times. I'm going on a business trip for 3 days. I went for a walk this morning and stumbled upon this coffee shop, so I bought this. Soy latte, remember? Yes, it's been a while. It was unusual for him to go for a walk in the morning. Stumbling upon a coffee shop and buying soy lattes seemed out of character, considering his recent behavior. He waited with a smile for me to take the soy latte. Was this a change of heart? I felt a glimmer of hope that the kind Ben I knew was returning. I wanted to go for walks with him again. Maybe after the baby was settled. I eagerly took the soy latte and drank it. It tasted familiar at first, but something was off. Is this milk? By the time I realized, it was too late. The cup slipped from my grasp. Ben's face twisted into a satisfied smirk. Hard to breathe. My breathing became labored as I slumped to the ground. I've always had my doubts. Is the child in your belly really mine? He questioned. What? I was utterly shocked by his accusation, suggesting the baby might belong to someone else. When you said you were 2 months pregnant, it didn't add up. I couldn't recall any encounter from 2 months ago. But that's... I wanted to explain to him that he was misunderstanding something, but I couldn't find my breath to defend myself. The numbers don't add up. You've been cheating. His accusation resonated in my ears. Despite not having much of the cafe latte, I felt terribly ill. 10 months pregnant, and instead of showing remorse for making me drink milk, an allergen, he was accusing me of infidelity. No, it's not like that. Help me. I didn't have the energy to clearly deny his suspicion. My raspy voice burst in front of him and quickly faded away. Acting won't help. I'm not fooled. Allergies aren't that serious. Convinced I was cheating, he, instead of helping me in my agony, left the house, still doubting me. What should I do? It's all over. With the last of my strength, I tried to call someone on my mobile phone. But my weak hands let the phone slip away. Please. Someone help. Desperately crying out in my mind, my consciousness began to fade. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was the white walls and ceiling, and I realized I was in a hospital. I was saved. As I felt relieved, I noticed someone's face peering in from the edge of my vision. Emma! You're awake! Henry. It was Henry, my cousin who lived nearby. Emma, you called me, and when I answered, I heard nothing at first, so I thought it was a mistake. But then I heard labored breathing and realized something was wrong. I rushed to your house, the front door was open, and I found you collapsed in the living room. It was a shock. I called an ambulance and had you taken to the hospital right away. Henry earnestly explained what happened after I collapsed. I remembered calling him just before I collapsed. He had always been like a big brother to me, caring for me. I thought he would come if there was an emergency. But before I could ask for help, I dropped the phone. I was in awe of him for sensing the emergency and rushing to help. "I'll call the doctor." "Wait here," he said and left the room. After a while, he returned with the doctor. The doctor explained that I had an anaphylactic shock due to drinking milk, but somehow managed to save me and the baby. Hearing that just a few more minutes could have endangered the baby's life, or left me with lasting disabilities, sent chills down my spine. My being here, awake in the hospital, was all thanks to Henry. "Henry, thank you, really. No need to thank me. But how did this happen?" His confusion was understandable. It was unthinkable for me, allergic to milk, to drink it willingly. Well, actually, I told him everything about my marriage with Ben up to this point. Ben and I thought we were meant for each other and got married. We had similar hobbies and always enjoyed our dates. Life was happy after marriage, at least for a while. But as soon as I got pregnant, his attitude changed drastically. Looking back, I still can't pinpoint what went wrong. Henry, arms crossed, seemed to be pondering the reason too. "Ben's behavior changed after you told him about the pregnancy, right?" "Yes. When I said I was 2 months pregnant, he thought the calculation was off. He convinced himself I cheated and did this as revenge, I guess." Henry's face hardened as I replied, "Revenge or not, this is too much. Feeding you milk when you're allergic. What was he thinking?" Anger was clearly visible in his eyes. I felt moved by his anger on my behalf. "I can't believe it. If it weren't for you, Henry, neither the baby nor I would have made it." Just thinking about what could have happened without his help sent shivers down my spine. Filled with a mix of relief and a desire for retribution against Ben, I asked, "What should I do about Ben?" Henry, seemingly pondering the same thing, asked me back. "Of course, I can't just let this go. I need to see that he's punished." As I responded, "If that's the case," he began, "I have a plan." After hearing his plan to deal with Ben, I couldn't wait to confront him. The plan was to be executed upon my discharge from the hospital when I first saw Ben. I resolved to follow Henry's advice when I met Ben. But the plan had to be put into action sooner than I thought. 3 days into my hospital stay, I received a call from Ben. It happened while Henry was visiting me. I hesitated to pick up the phone, and the call ended. But Ben called again immediately. So persistent. I muttered, staring at the incessantly ringing phone. The phone stopped briefly, only to ring once more. As the cycle repeated, I looked at Henry, silently seeking advice. "Let's execute the plan now, a bit earlier than expected." "Understood," I replied. Nervously, I picked up the mobile phone, pressed the call button, turned on the speaker, and placed it on the table. "Hello, Emma?" Finally, you answer. "Seriously? I returned from my business trip, and you were nowhere to be found. I've been searching all over for you. Running away from home, what's that about? Thanks to you, I haven't had dinner." His angry voice filled the hospital room. If I had held the phone to my ear, it would have hurt from the loudness. Ben, showing no concern for me, immediately started yelling. He was the one who made me drink milk and sent me to the hospital. His complaint about not having dinner was ridiculous, considering he never cooks. If he can't cook, he should eat out, but he doesn't even do that. It's like dealing with a child. While listening to Ben's angry words, I exchanged a resolute nod with Henry. "Excuse me, but who am I speaking to?" I deliberately lowered my tone to confuse Ben. "What? What are you talking about?" Ben sounded baffled on the other end. Henry and I exchanged a knowing look and smirked. "I don't know who you are." "The mobile phone screen says Ben, so are you perhaps my husband?" "What?" He sounded completely perplexed. It made sense. After repeatedly calling his wife, he finally got through, only to hear nonsensical words. I glanced at Henry again and smirked. Henry nodded in agreement. Then Henry took the mobile phone from me and began to speak to Ben. "Hello, Ben. My name is Henry. I heard Emma's voice on the phone and took over the call. What? Henry? Who are you? Are you the father of Emma's child? So you're the one she's been cheating with? Ben hastily accused Henry in a stern tone. Cheating? What are you talking about? I'm Emma's cousin. Actually, Emma is currently suffering from amnesia. Amnesia? Yes, this was the plan Henry and I devised. I would pretend to have lost my memory to confuse Ben. The goal was to get Ben to admit that he was the one who gave me the milk. The plan was supposed to be executed when we met in person, but Ben's call accelerated things. No problem, though. It might even be more convenient over the phone since he can't see my face. Don't you know? Emma collapsed from anaphylactic shock 3 days ago due to a cafe latte she drank. What? Ben seemed clueless about such matters, tilting his head on the other end of the line. She nearly died after ingesting milk, an allergen. The baby was almost affected too. Emma lost her memory due to the psychological shock. You were the one who gave her the drink, right? Henry's tone was stern. Ben let out a small cry of disbelief. No. What do you mean no? It was me who gave it to her, and told me to do it. Ben's voice trembled. Hearing this shocking revelation, Henry and I exchanged glances. Then, from the other end of the phone, a woman's voice exclaimed, "Wait a minute!" We were stunned. It was Anne. I remembered her well as one of Ben's colleagues who had visited our house before. She was the beautiful one. Was Ben cheating with Anne? Why am I getting blamed? You were the one who made her drink it, weren't you? You said giving her the allergic milk would make her bedridden for days, so we could go on a trip without her noticing, right? Yeah, but you gave her too much. Ben and Anne began arguing. From their conversation, it seemed Anne had known about my milk allergy and planned to make me slightly ill so they could travel without worries. Ben and Anne were clearly having an affair. After all his accusations of my supposed infidelity, Ben was the one cheating. I felt nauseated by his hypocrisy. I exchanged a look with Henry and took back the phone. Thank you for your time. I've recorded everything you just said. Hearing my voice, supposedly amnesiac, Ben and gasped on the other end. What? What do you mean? Sorry, the amnesia was a lie. It was a ruse to get you to admit you gave me the milk. Thanks to that, I also got your confession of cheating. I'll be claiming a substantial compensation. I said it cheerfully, and Ben and both shouted in disbelief. How foolish can they be? Henry and I were astounded by their lack of awareness of the severity of their actions. That's terrible. You were cheating too, weren't you? Then the compensation should be split, right? No, it's your fault for cheating first. I thought of cheating with and because of you. So, no need for compensation, right? Ben's triumphant tone was grossly misguided. When did I say I cheated? It's obvious if you count the pregnancy weeks. Ben was clearly mistaken. I set him straight. Pregnancy weeks are counted from the end of the last menstrual period. Not knowing that and suspecting me of cheating, then deciding to cheat yourself, that's despicable. I'm divorcing you. Prepare for a hefty compensation. I yelled with all my might and hung up forcefully. Then I blocked Ben's calls. Finally, peace returned. Henry, really, thank you. No, I didn't want to see Emma sad. I'm glad you could set Ben straight. We sighed in relief, facing each other. I was going to have a child without a father, but it's decidedly better than having a father like Ben. Later, Henry and I submitted the voice recorder data with Ben and Anne's confessions to the police. They were promptly arrested and are currently being interrogated. A colleague of Ben's, who visited us before, said it was clear even at their workplace that Ben and Anne were together. One of the colleague, Mike, confessed. I regret not speaking up sooner. But I understand it takes courage to expose a colleague's wrongdoing. I reassured Mike it was okay. Ben's previous engagement had been called off due to his sudden change in behavior. A revelation that made perfect sense. Additionally, it was discovered that Ben and had used company business trips as a cover for their personal vacations multiple times, leading to their dismissal for misusing company funds. After their release from prison, they'll be starting life from scratch, having lost their jobs. The compensation they owe me is substantial. They paid it off with loans, but I wonder what they plan to do next. Sometimes I think they might be better off in prison, given the gravity of their crimes. Taking my allergy lightly, poisoning me with milk, and their infidelity. I have no sympathy for them. I hope they deeply reflect on their actions while with the police. Meanwhile, I gave birth to a baby girl and am currently living at my parents' house, where they help me raise her. Henry often visits and helps with the baby, which I greatly appreciate. When she gets a bit older, how about we go out together? Henry suggested sincerely. Yes. I nodded with a smile. Perhaps there's a future where Henry and I end up together. These hopeful thoughts fill my mind.